So here we are. I've got the lovely morning spring sunshine in my eyes, and I've arrived at the Hyde Park site of the memorial monument and bird sanctuary created in honour of William Henry Hudson in spring 1925. Robert Cunninghame organised the whole thing, so he chaired the committee for 3 years after Hudson's death to establish this for his friend, who was by this time also a national treasure. And they got the Prime Minister, no less, Conservative PM Stanley Baldwin, to come and do the honours on this spring morning. And so Cunninghame obviously greeted the crowd. The big crowd had gathered, and he welcomed them, and he told them a bit about Hudson's extraordinary life and how the two had known each other and had this shared dual heritage, and this sort of past that they'd had separately but overlapping in South America, and how this bonded them, as well as their love of literature, nature, but also a commitment to making the world a better place in their different ways. And so he introduced the PM who did his spiel. And 10 years later, Cunninghame, as his last act, he launched one final expedition. He was a great adventurer and explorer, obviously, and he launched one final expedition back across the Atlantic to once again be on the Pampas. And his mission was to pay homage at the childhood home of Hudson, and this had recently been rediscovered, derelict. And Cunninghame went there and he sat in that humble little estancia, and he wrote a letter home about of all the pilgrimages he'd ever done, and he'd done a few. You know, he was often on the trail of saints and religious people, and people trying to do heroic things in difficult places, and but nothing, he said, had ever moved him as much as that. And he died just a few days later in a Buenos Aires hotel. So anyway, it's a very moving story, and I'm really fascinated by the friendship between these two sort of outsiders who sort of collided from different directions and had these extraordinary lives. So anyway, it's all beautifully commemorated here, and it's very nice to be back to pay my respects a century on. So anyway, if you're ever in this part of the world, I strongly recommend you launch a wee expedition of your own to enjoy this beautiful spot. This is the water feature, and it's beautifully surrounded by trees and singing birds, which I think Hudson would have liked best of all. Anyway, I give you W.H. Hudson and Don Roberto Cunninghame.